I want to take a few minutes, Mr. Speaker, to go back to the introductory comments that we heard this morning from the Leader of the Official Opposition as it related to her comments about the blockade and the protesters and everything that's going on outside, which I found to be quite interesting to be raised in a debate that really didn't address that. This debate is about developing a roadmap, which I'll get to shortly. It's about developing a roadmap, but for some reason, she spent a great deal of time with a personal appeal to the protesters, asking them to leave. And I was delighted to hear that. It's great to hear the Leader of the Official Opposition finally get to the point of asking those that are participating in these blockades to leave. But I couldn't help but wonder why. You know, why is the Leader of the Opposition suddenly making a dramatic change in her approach? The Leader of the Opposition, a week ago, an email was leaked by what I can only assume is a very conscientious and concerning Conservative staffer, where she had asked the former Leader of the Opposition, I know it's hard to keep track, we're going through them pretty quickly right now, but she had asked the former Leader of the Opposition not to do anything about the blockaders and to make it the Prime Minister's problem. Now that doesn't sound like somebody who is trying to bring unity in this House and bring everybody together.
Doesn't sound that way to me.
And then even more recently, we learned from a Politico article that's out there that she actually sat down with truckers and said, don't stop what you're doing. Sorry, I want to say protesters, okay? Because, you know, I think that the vast majority out there are beyond just representing the truckers. But she sat down with protesters and said, don't stop what you're doing. What you're doing is working. Keep it up. Now, that doesn't sound to me like somebody who would then, within a week, stand in this House and introduce a motion that's basically calling on everybody to get together and to work on a solution. I'm sorry, you can't have it both ways, Mr. Speaker. You can't be the saviors of the Freedom Convoy and the saviors of the people in downtown Ottawa all together in one when you're flip-flopping back and forth all the time. And so I ask myself, why? Why have the Conservatives suddenly taken a new approach, taken a new direction? And I think it's quite obvious to those who are following this pretty closely. Public opinion is changing on this, Mr. Speaker. It's changing pretty darn quick. I even notice it in social media feeds. More and more people are saying, hold on, this isn't right what's going on in Ottawa. This isn't about truckers. This is something much bigger than that. And by the way, where's the money coming from to fund this? There's all sorts of stories out there with GoFundMe and all these other organizations that are drumming up money from the United States, it's reported, in other areas of the world. And the Conservatives are starting to get nervous now, Mr. Speaker. They're sitting there saying, hold on, what are we getting ourselves into? This seemed really good a week ago. Maybe it's time we change course. In my humble opinion, Mr. Speaker, although some of my friends from across the way might not suggest it's all that humble, but in my opinion, the Leader of the Opposition can see the writing on the wall now and has realized it's time to change course on this because we're getting in way too deep.
I agree.
And that's what's happening. And so they realize that they've gone too far. And that's why they're asking them to leave now. Here, I want to read a quote from you. This is from a Conservative member of Parliament that said, quote, "These blockaders are taking away the freedoms of other people to move their goods and themselves." This is a quote from a Conservative member talking about a blockade. Not this blockade. This is the member from Carleton. Now, he was talking about a blockade on February 13th of 2020, blocking a rail line in the Tyendinaga area. Isn't it interesting? The so-called individual who will be coronated soon to become the Leader of the Official Opposition has these incredible flip-flops. He's all concerned about the moving of goods down a rail line when it's Indigenous protesters, but when it comes to what's going on the streets of Ottawa, he's absolutely silent. Three of us, he had 3 questions a couple days ago. 3 of us, back to back, myself, the Bloc, And the NDP all asked him, does he support what's going on out there? And he totally skated through it. He did not want to address it because he knows that he can raise money and he can get votes off of the people that are outside. But I think that he also knows he can't get them from Indigenous protesters in Tyendinaga. And that's the irony. That's the hypocrisy of the member from Carleton and the Conservative Party at writ large, because they do this all the time. And so they flip-flop, and we're seeing these flip-flops. Gosh, like, let's look back at the last 2 years. Close the borders. We need the borders closed immediately, right now. Why didn't you do it 3 weeks ago? And then all of a sudden, why aren't the borders open? We need the borders open. People need to travel. They flip-flopped back and forth on that issue at least 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years. Is that leadership? I highly doubt it. What about the vaccines? The member from Calgary Nose Hill. We're not going to have vaccines till 2030. We're never going to get vaccines. Vaccines will never be around here. And then all of a sudden, where are the vaccines? Why don't we have vaccines? Why aren't there vaccines everywhere? Is that leadership? No. But we hear it, another flip-flop. How about rapid tests? Oh my goodness. We need rapid tests. Where are the rapid tests? Rapid tests don't work. Nobody needs rapid tests. They flip-flop. They literally go outside, stick their finger in the wind, and say, what are we doing today? Which way is the wind blowing? That's not leadership, Mr. Speaker. And so we get to what we're debating today. You know, it's ironic. We had a unanimous consent motion not even an hour ago in this House when the vast majority of members are paying very close attention to what's going on in here. A unanimous consent motion.
What did it say?
I'll tell you what it said. It said that the House condemns the intimidation of citizens and journalists, the incessant honking, the arson attempts, the shooting of fireworks in the downtown core of Ottawa, the flooding of emergency lines such as 911 and local police numbers by fake emergency calls, the blockade of essential road infrastructure, and the overall siege situated currently being maintained.
Hear, hear.
Now, when we do a unanimous consent motion, Mr. Speaker, we sent this to them ahead of time, which is the proper procedure when we do this.
Yep.
They knew what they were saying no to. And you know what?
They said no.
One lone conservative over there, obviously set up by the whip's desk, probably with their head down, said no and rejected the unanimous consent motion on behalf of the leader of the opposition. And this is the same person that says we need to come in here and work together. We need to be unanimous, work together. And by the way, I want the protest to end right now. And it's clear that she does not want the protest to end for the same reasons that the rest of the country does. She wants it to end because she realizes it's a political liability now. And that's the conundrum that they put themselves into, and they do it routinely. So this motion's calling for a roadmap, Mr. Speaker. It's asking the government to set out a path and to put measurables in place to determine at what point certain things will happen. Makes sense, eh? Makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys? Well, guess what? Ontario's done it. And guess what? They keep changing it.
No.
3 months ago, we didn't know about the Omicron virus. We had no idea. So we're getting new things thrown into the equation all the time. So you want, Mr. Speaker, what the opposition is asking for is that we develop a roadmap when there are so many variables. They want to be able to tie something down when it's literally impossible to do it. Ontario's been trying to do it unsuccessfully. They keep having to change it because it's impossible to do. So how will we do it? We will do it by listening to science. And I'll get to Dr. Tam and Dr. Moore's points in a second. We'll do it by listening to the science. We'll do it by listening to the experts that advise us at the various different points, rather than trying to do it based on the political wind that the leader of the Conservative Party and her caucus, who are heckling me right now, insist on so much. And we're going to do it by using the proper ways that we should allow for things like this to unroll, which is by listening to the medical experts. And so we talk about Dr. Tam and Dr. Moore, who, by the way, I have a huge amount of respect for. I was on the Kingston, Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington Public Health Unit before Dr. Moore was even the medical officer of health for Kingston. I've known the gentleman since 2006. We've had a number of conversations on this and many other health-related matters in my riding. I have the most incredible amount of respect for him. He and Dr. Tam have said, we need to, no, see, they didn't say open up. And that's what they're heckling me from the other side. And this is my point, is that they're misrepresenting the comments that they've made. What they've been saying is they've been saying we need to establish at some point how we will move out of this. They need to do it. Yep. They need to do it, not politicians in this room. And you know how I know that to be the fact? And you know how I know that the Conservatives know that to be the fact, Mr. Speaker? It was because the member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lake referenced Dr. Tam coming to the Health Committee and making this comment, which she also made in a press conference. So my question for my Conservative colleagues is, did you ask Dr. Tam if we should make the roadmap? Probably not. No, you didn't. You know why they didn't, Mr. Speaker? Because they probably didn't want to hear her answer. Because I would be willing to bet that Dr. Tam would have said, it's probably best that you leave the decisions in the hands of the experts rather than politicians trying to create a roadmap. And that's what this is about. That's what debate after debate in this House is about, Mr. Speaker. It's about Conservatives trying to politicize every issue. They're laughing. They're laughing and they're clapping right now. Well, guess what? Hey, I got one for you, Mr. Speaker. A week and a half ago, there were Conservatives all over Wellington Street taking pictures with protesters, posting them on Facebook. Why aren't they doing it now? Why doesn't one of these members laughing at me right now, Mr. Speaker, go outside, take a picture with a protester and be like, I'm so proud to support these people? Why don't they do it, Mr. Speaker? Because they know the conundrum that they put themselves in. And I realize that they're heckling me because the truth hurts, but it is unfortunately the reality of the situation, Mr. Speaker. And so if they want to prove me wrong, I encourage one of them right now, who's sitting in here right now heckling me, to go outside and do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Here, here.